You're listening to Contesting Wrestling Premium.
Oh, yeah, premium.
And damn, that's good. I can tell you've been working on that impression for 30 years.
Indeed.
We are joined, premium listeners, you've got a real treat in that we are joined for both the 10th time and also the first time by somebody. The former,
newly christened by her.
the newly christened by my birth name.
By your birth. I didn't know if you wanted me to say that.
I am referee Katie Vella.
It is weird that you're not allowed to use a name that is the name of a figure from American folklore.
Oh no, you're allowed.
No, I'm allowed to. It's just it was the horse was dead. The horse was dead.
Yeah, you're no longer crossing the Betsy Ross Bridge regularly, so...
No, I'm no longer I don't even live in
work.
Philadelphia anymore. Like, how was I gonna ever make T-shirts when if I made a T-shirt based off Betsy Ross, I could at any point be sued by the actual estate of Betsy Ross?
Oh.
You could name...
You put the Confederate flag on it and everything.
Oh, God, Ben, shut up.
You could name... You could, now that you're in New York, you could name yourself, like, I don't know, like, after, like, Peter Stuyvesant's wife. But he was a bad person though.
Yeah.
I meant the colonial flag. Not the Confederate flag. Oh, this is off to a good start.
The point is we're all going by our birth names now.
We are.
Evan is, Ben is, I am, and then we've got Dr. Rod Zombo Diamondfire.
Yeah, my name is gonna be whatever I feel like for
Rod
the rest of my life.
Zarathustra Diamond Fire.
You will
Rod Zapata Diamondfire.
You will only ever learn any other name that Doc may or may not go by when the lawsuits begin after our episodes that we won't tell you about because they're so scandalous, but they are going to be released, and then we will be sued over them.
When the lawsuits on behalf of the Betsy Ross estate begin.
There you go.
Today, this is going to be the premium complement to our great episode last week with podcaster and photographer extraordinaire Matt Josephson, where we start to delve into the world of Mr. Machismo Manfred Randall Savajowski.
Man,
He is Jewish.
Speaking of real
Really?
names,
Yeah.
Oh, man,
That's-
Well, his mom was Jewish, so he's like officially
that
Jewish.
is- yeah.
He wasn't raised Jewish. Angelo Paffo was not keeping a
his
Jewish
father.
household.
Matt was going to join us for this episode, except I got really mad, so I taped him up and threw him in the closet of a cruise ship.
oh no,
I felt bad afterwards, but watching it happen, it was pretty funny. It would have been
really cool for him because it was the Jericho cruise ship, but that already happened a couple weeks ago, so he's just there in the dock.
they shanghaied him. They're gonna put him to work on the deck,
Well, look, I was trying to rob the place, and he was in the way.
like MVP.
That's the joke.
That's the joke, right?
Now, so I'm gonna
I
say
don't get it.
But MVP. MVP went to jail.
Oh, that's right. That's why he went to jail.
He
Okay,
went
now
to
I
jail
get it.
for robbing a cruise ship.
Specifically, what got him put away so long, and this is his own words, I believe, is that he threw a girl in like a closet, and that got him a kidnapping charge.
Yeah. This is when he was a teenager. He did about 8 or 9 years in jail. He said the best advice given to him is jail is work. What's exactly?
At least it wasn't a refrigerator.
Make the time work for you. Don't work for the time. And he came out, in his late 20s, like, okay, I'm going to start my life now. And he, made a success of himself.
Punky Brewster agrees with you, Ben.
I mean, hey, if you're in jail and you have all that time to get in crazy good shape,
Yep.
be a wrestler afterwards. Oh, you've already probably eliminated a lot of your bodily fear.
Yeah.
You've probably already killed a few people.
And then, yeah, exactly.
Or it certainly intimidated people.
Yes, certainly intimidated people.
Um,
Speaking of intimidating people, Randy Savage.
Yeah.
Randy Savage, Randy Paffo, a son of Angelo Paffo, brother of Leaping Lanny Paffo, who was a great wrestler in his own right.
And poet.
And poet, yes. So he was a baseball player at first. He played for the Cincinnati Reds and the St. Louis Cardinals.
Interesting.
He was not called Randy Savage at that point.
You don't think of, maybe this is just me being a lifelong not sports person, you don't think of baseball players as athletes, really. It doesn't look because it doesn't look like they're doing anything, right? They're
Oh,
just
man.
like, one guy throws the ball, the other guy hits the ball, then there's some running. But I
That's,
guess you do have to do a lot.
That's at Evan Burke, ETC.
That's it, yeah.
Anybody who ever tore a rotator cuff throwing a ball or built explosive power for sprinting speed.
I'm now learning that is not the case.
You know how you
I guess, but yeah.
like seriously though, you know how you like working out with kettlebells?
Sure.
You know how like it's because the weight is on the end of it?
Yes.
Well, now take something that weighs about that much but's much longer and try and hit an object coming at you at 90 miles an hour.
Oh,
So basically, whip out your dick and try to hit an object coming at you.
First, you're assuming that I don't do that in my spare time. And second, yeah, I get it's all joking aside, where I'm busting up on baseball players. It is this has been another thing. Like as I have, this podcast has kind of run concurrent with my like growing awareness of both my own physicality and like the concept of sports in general. Something
They do go hand in hand. I find
They
I know it sounds silly, but
No,
like
but
I
it is.
find in a lot of nerd circles where nobody does any sports because they're the enemy for some reason. It's not just we don't do that. It's like there's no reason anybody should do that, and then like somebody starts working out, and all of a sudden they understand
And
why this
also-
is impressive.
Also, that there's a lot of thinking that goes into it.
Yes.
And, like, knowledge that you have to have in order to do it correctly.
For certain.
They start doing a couple like anal hook dumbbells and realize the anus muscles exist.
Well, those muscles I have been aware of for a long time. It was all of the other ones like the hips and shit that like I just had no conception of
I mean, that is a
for
thing.
most of my youth.
So, Randy Savage.
Yeah,
So, I want to talk a little bit about his very early career.
Yes.
Because it's notable. He was originally called the Spider, and he had kind of a Spider-Man gimmick, which is funny because he plays the wrestler that's Peter Parker wrestles at the beginning of the first Spider-Man movie
Really?
from the early 2000s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Which is canon, Spider-Man canon. The story of Spider-Man. At first, he tries to make money using his powers by being a wrestler, and then after his Uncle Ben dies, he becomes a superhero. But yeah, so that was a cool little thing. He became Randy Savage. He was wrestling in like Georgia and the Mid-Atlantic region. His father, Angelo Poffo, decided that Randy and his brother Lanny weren't getting booked enough or pushed enough. So he created his own outlaw promotion, ICW, which at the time was a big deal. Like the NWA still had control over everything.
Explain what an outlaw promotion is for anybody who is unfamiliar with the term.
It was a promotion that, one, did not recognize the NWA World Champion, and two, was running in the same towns that NWA-affiliated promotions were running.
ICW, by the way, stands for Insane Clown Wrestling.
I would hope so.
I think it was International Championship Wrestling.
International
International
Wrestling.
Championship Wrestling, running the greater Memphis area and
Right.
nowhere else.
No. Insane Clown Wrestling. Look it up. It's what ICP based their name off of.
Eventually, the Poffos all... Yes, exactly.
From coast to
Eventually-
coast of both sides of the Mississippi River.
Right.
Eventually, the Poffos, the ICW closed down, and they all moved to the Memphis territory. What the hell is it called? CWA.
Memphis.
CWA Memphis, run by Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett.
Right, kind of
Clown Wig Wrestling.
And have you ever heard of this
Clown Wig Alliance. Sorry.
alternative folk band called the Mountain Goats?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So they have an album that's all about wrestling.
Really?
All territory wrestling. No, the guy's a huge wrestling fan. There's a song, like one of the catchier songs on the album is about Chavo Guerrero
Oh, yeah.
Sr. And I read an interview with that guy, the guy from the Mountain Goats, and he said that he was a big fan of this era of, Memphis and Georgia wrestling. I'm not sure exactly which promotion he was watching, but when Savage was signed to the WWF, to him it was very much like a punk band selling out and getting a major label deal, where he wanted to keep watching him to see what he did, but it was like, oh man, the cool indie thing has been abandoned.
So I want us to be conscious when we post this episode. Put a link to that promo that we watched of Savage in 1983. Was it
1980.
1980?
And
Wow.
the promo is called Randy Savage Freaks Out. If you're looking for it, and if you look for Randy Savage ICW, it should pop up. It is from ICW. I don't know if he had a cold.
Well, yeah, I have a lot of questions about that. So that was his like first appearance? That was his.
No,
that was
he was
an
the champion.
Oh, he was the champion. Okay.
Oh, he started wrestling in the 70s. It's like
All right.
he played baseball for a few years in the early 70s and then went into wrestling because his father was a wrestler and he wanted to do it. You know?
My favorite part of the promo is like, I stare at a candle for 2 hours in order to figure out how to beat you.
That's one of the only lines of his I could even make out. He looked a lot like Doc, actually, in this.
Yeah, he kind of did. He's got kind of the same aesthetic that I like to put forward.
But Laura, also, as I was watching these matches at 6:45 in the morning while my wife was getting ready to go to her real job, she was like, are you watching Doc right now? Oh wait, no, that's from like the 80s.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think he might have been chewing tobacco.
well, there's something. Okay, there is.
I think he was crying.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
That
It sounds like he's crying, and I was watching this and I was like, this is a really interesting impression of like his early character, because it's like if the Macho Man is here crying and it's like 1983, like I don't know, I guess that's relatively progressive-ish. I don't know.
Well, in 1980, when you hear the phrase "Macho Man," I think you think more the disco song.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
don't
that
don't
makes
look at it
yes.
through the current
also-
lens of what we think of it. You know,
I think he was a heel.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Maybe he was constipated.
He does sound like that a lot when
A
he
lot.
talks. I would love to see a shoot interview with him, just because I'm like I like, what does his voice actually sound like? Because one of the things that is fascinating to me about him is that it does appear to that doing his character is causing him physical discomfort.
So I don't know. I don't remember who told this story, but someone told a story about Savage in Ordinary Life. One time eating with the Ultimate Warrior, and it was the kind of thing where they would find a restaurant, they'd sit in a booth in the back so no one would bother them. They're covered in like hats and sunglasses and whatever else to disguise their identity, and they're sitting there just eating in silence. And finally, Savage is like, good food. And then everybody turns around and looks at him because of his unmistakable voice. Apparently, that's his fucking voice.
He just sounds like that. Because they're like, even like if you watch him when he's talking, like he's like doing all this stuff with his face muscles.
He's always in motion.
And it's like, there's a strain. It like kind of reminds me of like watching like footage of Captain Beefheart sing in the 60s, where it's like this, like you doing this right now is not good for you. Like you are paying a price, which is true of all wrestling, certainly.
Sure. But not in the promos.
Not in the promos. And that's the other thing, is that to me, the big before we even get into the specifics of the matches today, I do want to say my big takeaway from the matches today is I would like to no longer watch any wrestling from before like 1995, because I'm eventually we'll have to do a Ric Flair episode. I understand that, but I just don't care about the wrestling from this era. I don't. That said, and I'm on the record as saying the promos of this era are amazing, and I will do an episode of just promos stuff. Savage is probably my favorite in-ring wrestler of this era.
He
by
was the
far.
best.
Yeah,
He
like
was
Apparently all that energy, I think, Doc, you're the one that told me this, was like, he seems like he's coked up, but apparently everyone says he just drank a lot of coffee.
That's the word, I mean, he was never arrested for it. It's not like he died of that, It's just some people are just like that. He was really high strung.
Well, he died of a heart attack, right?
Car crash.
No, he had a heart attack while driving, which caused the crash. He was dead
Whoa.
before the car crashed.
Yeah.
I guess that's sort of comfort. I mean, better.
No, it was horrible.
No, that's
Oh,
the
it was
whole
horrible,
thing is
yeah.
terrible. I mean, I just didn't. I was thinking, like, if I was about to crash my car, I guess my thought would be like, boy, I sure hope I die before I actually hit, so I don't know what
Well,
it's like.
he was driving and he had like just a straight up like Widowmaker fatal heart attack,
Damn.
like thump, and then since he was dead, the car horribly crashed.
But yeah, to your point, Evan, a lot of the wrestlers of the next generation grew up watching Randy Savage and emulating him, and that's why wrestling evolved in a lot of ways. Not just him. I mean, there were people in Japan. There was Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, and that kind of stuff. But him more than anyone else, I think, really drove the style forward.
Well, and this when we watch wrestling from the classic era, it's part of what drags me down about it so much is like it's such a different slower, less nuanced style. And I understand the historical importance and stuff.
Sure.
You know, watching these matches also really started to make me wonder, like, is it possible to become a wrestling fan without nostalgia? Like, if you don't have nostalgia for this, is it possible? The stuff that we watched for another episode then cured me of that, because I was like, oh, cool. I watched a bunch of Chris Jericho matches, and I was like, nope, this is great. I'm in.
But it might be impossible to get into this era of wrestling as an adult.
But then
I know a lot of people in the business who like got into wrestling.
Who already liked wrestling.
Well, yeah, but once again, take into consideration how old we are and how old a lot of people who get into wrestling are, and then they go back and watch the old stuff, and they do indeed like it. You don't have nostalgia for stuff that happened well before you were born. You might like it, but it's not like, oh, when I was a kid, now when you were a kid, it was 1999.
I mean, there is a sort of nostalgia.
No, but I feel like you could be a kid now.
Yeah.
Someone could show you a bunch of 80s wrestling, and you could get into it that way.
Oh, yeah,
Just
absolutely.
the fact that it happened
I know
before you
wrestlers
were
that
born
do
doesn't
that with
matter.
their kids. They won't show them modern wrestling, but they'll show them old wrestling because it's for kids, and they get way into it.
Well, yeah, and like nostalgia is a relative thing. Like I get nostalgic if I hear like, I don't know, Led Zeppelin or whatever. I was born 4 years after John Bonham died.
But when you were in your formative years, Led Zeppelin's music was still everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Randy Savage ain't still wrestling.
But I would say, like, watching him wrestle, like, he looks like he wrestles like a modern wrestler dropped into the past. Like, you can see the influence that he had on everybody. You can see the fact that it's just like it's a little quicker.
He's so frenetic.
It's a little more high flying. Like, it's not like quite where anybody, you know, it's not where people wound up taking those things, obviously, but it's still very much. I don't know. He looks ahead of his time. He looks like he is a much more exciting performer than a lot of his peers at
very
the
much
time. And I you know, it would be a stretch to say that I enjoyed watching these matches.
So let's talk about the matches. The first one, I wanted to dig up a match from his territory days.
Yeah.
So I found this match against Austin Idol from CWA Memphis in the Mid-South Coliseum from May 14th, 1984 for Savage's International Heavyweight title. And I decided to pick that one for a couple reasons. One, so Evan could see Austin Idol wrestle, because that was the guy in the ad for his wrestling school in that one episode of NWA Power.
Several episodes.
Yes.
The one that Evan watched.
The one that Evan watched, yeah.
But yes, he did that for a while. So that was that guy. And also, you see in this match Angelo Poffo, Savage's dad, with the crutches outside the ring. And the match starts with Savage beating Idol with his crutch. Other than that, you know, the match isn't that much to write home about.
They mostly just punch each other. I think the worth in analyzing something like this isn't so much the wrestling in a context like this. If you're studying to be a wrestler, it's a class on how to get over without doing anything, which is very important if you're going to wrestle 6 days a week and you don't want to kill your body. But I think it's more interesting if we just look at the context. We look at the quality of the video, which, you know, even by 1983 standards, this is bad. Like, this is meant for consumption once on TV, and that's it. I like to look at the makeup of the audience. You notice there's a lot more women in the audience than you see in modern wrestling, because they were way into it. They also came to see Austin Idol.
And it's a big crowd for a local territory show.
Memphis would run an arena every week in that area.
Damn.
Wrestling, like, it's hard to say it like this, but wrestling actually used to be a lot bigger in America, because instead of like 1 or 2 touring companies that would run 4 arenas a night, there would be a dozen territories that would each run an arena in their territory a couple times a week, and then spot shows around that territory.
And I guess it was kind of more in the vein of, I mean, you know, it's got the carnival roots, but I guess it was also kind of more in the vein of like a monster truck rally, or like an event in the area that people were like, oh shit, what are you doing this Saturday? Well, there's
Sunday.
fucking nothing else to do. Sunday.
Sunday.
So we're doing this.
Yeah.
Truckosaurus.
Yeah, Truckosaurus versus Austin Idol.
It is. That was not a fair match, I have to say. Austin Idol
Yeah, I
died.
mean, that's really what retired Austin Idol.
Well, so
Oh, man.
I do want to remark on the actual finish. Austin Idol beats Savage for the title with the figure 4 leg lock that the announcers pretend Austin Idol invented,
Right.
calling it the Las Vegas Las Vegas leg lock, and that's notable because it shows how local this stuff was. Like, these fans didn't necessarily know. I mean, they probably knew about.
If you read the wrestling
Ric Flair.
magazines, you'd know who the NWA World Champion was, and maybe if they ever came to town. But the NWA World Champion notoriously avoided Memphis a lot because it was, for as big crowds as that was, on a national level, wasn't that big. It was big. Memphis was bigger locally than almost any territory was locally. But Memphis is not a really big city. It's not Chicago. It's not New York. It's not L.A.
It's not even Nashville.
Right, exactly. It's not even Nashville.
Yeah, you would have to. You couldn't buy the magazines. You would have to find them in the forest with the porn at the time.
It is so amazing. Even like as somebody who was well into my teenage years by the time like the internet like really started going, like it's crazy to think about how siloed information used to be and how hard it was to fucking learn about anything. Like
The forest porn thing wasn't a joke.
oh no, that is some real shit. Like we didn't experience it as city kids for the most part.
Those
but,
are
like,
some species of fungi that Hart has found in the woods recently, right?
But
the porn that grows
yes,
naturally.
yeah. Well, there's the naturally occurring porn, and then the plastic-based man-made porn that makes its way into the woods. That is slowly being reclaimed by nature. But yeah, that's some real shit. I remember, like, I heard like a comedian joke about that years ago, like, you know, like finding porn in the woods, and I was like, that's ridiculous. And then almost every single human being I know who grew up anywhere outside of a major city was just like, oh yeah, no, that's 100% a real thing that happened.
I mean, you guys just found it taped to the bottom of the subway seats.
For the most part, we did. Me and somebody
that's not
else.
what was sticking them to the bottom of the subway seats.
Oh boy. Myself and somebody else who may or may not co-host this podcast did used to shoplift a lot of porn from bodegas back in the day, but we don't need to get into any of that.
Yeah, we don't want the.
Did
we
I
don't
do
want
that?
the.
I don't remember that.
Come on, guys. The Paw Patrol is listening.
What I do
They're
remember,
they're always listening.
I do remember finding porn in the recycling area of my apartment building. That was like my first porn, and I would like slip it under my shirt and run upstairs, and I remember us buying a lot of wrestling from the porn store during this bizarre time when Giuliani, I think, mandated that in order to sell porn, you had to have a certain percentage non-porn.
Yeah, like in
the
New York
front of
City.
the store.
It had to be like 60% of your stock had to be non-porn.
Because that's a great idea. You know, lure children in with fucking wrestling and cartoons. And what I really don't understand the rationale behind that.
It was already such a, like, in retrospect, it's so creepy to think about how, before the internet, like, was that widespread. Like, you had to find the bodega guy that would willingly sell you porn, even though you were visibly under the age of 18. Like, that was the thing. Like, I had to find, like, in retrospect, like, the guy who was selling me porn when I was 13 should have been jailed.
He was also selling me beer.
Yeah, it was it's not cool. Also, that specific guy still in business. Walked by.
Where does he work?
And then we walked by it on the way here.
The one Lucy spot in Manhattan
Yeah.
that I know of.
Lower Manhattan.
I know of one in Upper Manhattan.
Thanks, Muhammad.
You're doing the Lord's work. Truly, you are the one who is blessed.
So if I could bring us back to this for a minute here, you maniacs. The
Macho maniacs.
Ooh, I'm finding porn in the woods.
The ultimate
Ultimate maniacs.
the ultimate goal of this podcast is to get Ben fired, so he has to do this full time.
right.
Well,
so
let's hope our Patreon numbers increase. And thank you, by the way,
thank you,
Patreon.
everybody.
You're the
Yes.
best.
Lord Waffle, please invite your friends.
Lord
Lord
Omelet.
Omelet.
Lord Omelet, please contact Lord Waffle and invite him and his friends.
So
And then waffle someone with a tire iron.
before we move
Lord
on
Tire Iron.
from this match, just a couple more things I was noticing because I wasn't watching the wrestling much because they were barely doing anything. You know, the ring was really bouncy. Like when they were walking back and forth, you could see it bouncing up and down like a trampoline. The ropes are mad loose, and Angelo Poffo and his crutches. Yeah, and the announcer was,
It looked harder for Savage to balance on the ropes for his flying double axe.
There's been a
handles.
major change over the last 30 years in the way ropes are hung, because in the 70s and a lot, the ropes were made more for like bouncing off of and sagging. And as high flying became a thing, the ropes started getting put on a lot tighter so you could stand on them and jump off of them.
Now, rings are what gives a wrestling ring its like springiness?
Well,
Springs.
Is it?
I mean, there
Some
are
rings-
ones. with
Sometimes,
springs. There
yes.
are ones with
some
springs.
rings have a big spring in the center. Some rings have a couple of springs in the mechanics, but really most rings don't. Most rings are wood beams. What's the word I'm looking for? Not stacked. What's the opposite of stacked? Spread across the surface with like metal beams crisscrossing under it. So it has to do with the wood that you're using a lot of the time, and then it has to do with exactly the materials you're using to build a ring.
So the boards give in the middle.
The
and
boards
that's what
give
gives it
in the
spring.
middle. That's why it's safer to bump in the middle of a ring than the sides.
That makes sense.
They point out on Monday Night Raw incessantly that the apron is the hardest part of the ring, and that's because the apron is just a steel beam that they have to put the boards on top of. So there's no give to it at all. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, okay.
And so Memphis is a really wacky like little microcosm. It's the kind of subject I wish I knew a little bit more about. I know there's a lot of it on YouTube, and I watch it and I'm like, this was crazy. It was the #1 rated local TV show in Memphis. They do every Saturday morning, and sometimes they'd get like a 40 share local.
We can do another episode with Dave,
Yeah, Dave probably knows
who
better
we're gonna
about
bring
that.
on for Japanese stuff, but he also knows quite a bit about Memphis.
Oh, sorry. Dave's in that closet, too.
We'll get Dave out. Right, so
And
shall
leave
we?
Matt in there. When you go to rescue Dave, just point at Matt and be like, "You stay there."
So shall we move on to some slightly more modern stuff?
Yes. So the other two matches, Macho King Randy Savage versus the Ultimate Warrior from WrestleMania 7, and then Macho Man Randy Savage versus Ric Flair for the WWF title at the subsequent WrestleMania 8, are really fit together quite nicely. They also fit together very well with the WrestleMania 5 match that you watched, Evan, between Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, in that they all tell this ongoing story of the relationship between Savage and Elizabeth. And we really see kind of the culmination of the story that started at WrestleMania 5, WrestleMania 4 even, in the WrestleMania 7 match with Warrior and Savage, where Elizabeth is in the crowd. Sensational Sherry had been in the corner of Macho King Randy Savage at the beginning of the match. When Savage loses to the Warrior, Sherry flips out on him, starts kicking the shit out of him, and then Elizabeth comes to his rescue, throws Sherry out of the ring, and they celebrate together, finally reconciled, reunited after becoming estranged around WrestleMania 5 due to Savage's jealousy.
Oh, this makes so much more sense.
And in the end, he loses his career because the Warrior match was a career match, but he gets Elizabeth back. And yeah, it's ham-fisted and it's archaic and, problematic in so many ways, but it's also really fucking heartwarming and beautiful.
You find several shots of people actually crying in the crowd because they'd been paying attention all these years, and like it's a soap opera, and this is what they wanted to see. Savage was stripped of his crown, but got his family back.
I would like to point out real quick, we mentioned Dave's. This is a rare late appearance that was not Earl Hebner, that was Dave Hebner reffing this match.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal with that was. He had mostly stopped reffing at that point. Maybe they're like, Dave, you want to do a match at Mania? And so he did.
He took an amazing bump.
He really
Oh,
did.
yeah. It takes a second to
but-
realize it's Dave. He's bigger than Earl, is what it is.
One last thing about the celebration between Savage and Liz. There's a little moment where Liz goes to hold the rope open for Savage, as he would make her do when he was a heel and being the overbearing husband and overbearing partner. And then he's like, no, I'll open the rope for you. And he opens it for her.
So I did not realize that because this match started and I was just like, oh, I guess Miss Elizabeth looks different than I remember.
No,
or
that's
she had-
Sherry.
I had no idea. And because I kept also being like, why do they keep cutting to like shots of like a bored woman in the audience? Like,
Listen to the announcers,
they-
Evan.
But every time I actually do that, I
Yeah.
regret it.
But
That's
that was
the
Heenan.
problem.
This was Heenan and Gorilla, though.
They were literally explaining to you as though you'd never seen wrestling before what was going on the whole time.
I guess I should have.
And
I guess I
if-
should have tuned in a
If
little
you
bit.
didn't catch the not intricate but really real story of this match, it's because you weren't listening to the announcers. They really
I was
explained
not.
everything.
I will be honest
Yeah.
that while I was watching these matches,
Yeah.
I mean, I was also like, I've been in just not a great place in my personal life in the last couple days. But while I was watching these matches, I was like, I don't want to fucking do this podcast anymore.
Did you accidentally
like-
sit on a cactus again, Evan?
Metaphorically, yes.
All right.
Oh,
There you go.
And so there was definitely part of me that was just like, all right, okay, so he throws him. All right, who gives a shit about any of this?
Why the fuck did I agree
yeah,
to do
what
this?
what am I fucking doing?
What did
here?
Why did I fucking come up with this?
Yeah. I was like, I guess I don't value our friendships enough. I would be happy to let them drift if I could stop doing this. That's a joke.
No matter how shitty the match that we make you watch, there's always a reason. Like there's always
always a
something to
reason,
the
yeah.
match that you're supposed to be picking up.
And that shot of Macho at the end lifting Liz is one of the most iconic
Yeah,
shots
no,
in
that
all
was-
of wrestling.
That was big. I will say it was nice to I watched. I will say there was a couple things about the Warrior
Yeah.
while I still do not care for the Warrior, and also he looks like he gets tired very quickly.
He does.
does.
And
he
he
is
didn't
not
even-
an endurance guy.
He didn't even run to the ring this time,
No.
and he was tired. I think he knew he was in for a longer match.
The whole thing where he's like-
Meh, 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 meh.
The whole thing where he's like communicating with his gods.
Yes.
Well, like I was like, okay, I can see what's fun about this.
That's not an angle. He's actually just talking to the sky.
Well,
He's
the-
schizophrenic.
The story over the course of the match, like this was definitely like one of those matches that Randy Savage would have, put out point by point. He's like, okay, I need to have a good match with the Ultimate Warrior. Hogan did it. I need to do it better. And so, he came up with the whole story. The unique career match, this is before stipulations like that were way overdone. They
Yeah, and
point
even
out-
in this case, Savage's career ends, and he's back in.
He's back in a few months.
A
Yeah.
few months,
But like how Warrior has on the butt of his trunks a picture of the title and the words like it means more than this because it's the whole career, And they.
Oh, I just thought that was referring to his ass.
Oh no! Well, his ass was heavily muscular like all of the rest of him. Here's they give each other their finishing moves a bunch of times, but it's not like it is today where somebody kicked out of their finish a bunch of times. They just
Savage does 5 flying elbows in a row.
To which the Warrior barely responds.
No, he
Well, he's supposed to be selling it, I think, like he's already dead, and then he kicks out.
But-
Stop. He's already dead.
Right.
By the way, that flying elbow of Savage's, no one has ever done it the same way.
No,
and
not
it's
really.
one of the most beautiful flying moves ever, stylistically.
Yo, everyone in this match is so dead.
Yeah.
All of
dead.
them. All of them, except Dave
Dave
Hebner.
Hebner's alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sherry's pretty amazing.
She's the best
Oh,
part
Sherry
of the
was
match, I
incredible.
think.
Yeah.
Would you agree, Evan?
Sherry, the other woman, in like the face
Oh,
paint
the
with
one
the
who
big
was like
silver
the
bow.
was
one
with
who was like
Savage.
who was like kicking Savage at the end when he
Yeah.
was done, and did one of the more like overt like ass shots.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen. I guess that was maybe
Oh,
more
she-
Her
at the
outfit
time.
is incredible.
She was
Like-
one of the earliest women who would just come out with her ass out, like when women didn't come out like that.
And the camera, like at one point, like she bends over and the camera's
yeah, I
like,
know the
let's
shot.
get into her butthole.
Yeah, at the time, they didn't usually do shots like that, but she bent over right into it, and they didn't cut away.
No, I mean it was pretty magnificent.
And I especially because I didn't quite get what the whole like Macho King
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
was, so I was just like, oh, it's like a peasant uprising when she's like, you have not done your duties as a ruler. I will beat you.
Well, she was the queen. He had become the king through like the King of the Ring tournament
Yeah.
or whatever. But it was kind of cool seeing them being carried out by like 6 dudes
Yeah.
on a pedestal.
They're all dead. What the hell?
Yeah, Sherry was the top women's wrestler in the world, basically, until they stopped really having a women's division, but they kept Sherry around. She was such a great character.
She also had like back injuries and stuff
Oh,
that
yeah,
caused
by
her to
then.
like shift to a more managerial role, which she was also incredible at.
she does, and yeah, that was just like acting, but like she just seems
Yeah.
like she's got the facial expressions. Like
She went to clown college.
Oh,
Clown college,
Yo,
you
clown-
can't eat that.
Clown college is some real shit. I knew people who went to clown college and like came away with some real skills.
Yeah.
I also know somebody. I once played in a band with a guy who we like showed up to rehearsal and he seemed really down. And I was like, "Hey man, what's wrong?" And he was like, "My girlfriend left me." And I was like, "Oh no, what happened?" And he was like, "Oh, she met this clown."
That's
And
that.
I was like, "Oh, you mean like he sucks?" And he was like, "No, like he's like an actual clown."
Okay.
And then he showed me a picture of her and the clown, and I was like, "That sucks, man."
Okay, you know what? That's it. I've had it with you people holding me back long enough. I'm going to clown college.
Do it. That's awesome.
I support that
Yeah.
entirely,
Clown
as long
college.
as you can keep doing the podcast.
Yeah, at the time, I was unaware that clown college involved actual skills. I was just like, "Oh, what? You go to school to be a metaphorical clown in the
Yeah.
parlance of the time?"
Is there a local clown college?
You know,
around
I
here?
don't know what the deal is with clown college anymore. You used to just go to Ringling Brothers, and they would teach you
Yeah.
how to be a clown. But yeah,
I met a mime when I was doing improv who
Oh.
my team tried to schedule a workshop with her because mimes are very good at object work and
Right.
stuff like that, and it kind of fell through. But she was interesting. I know that there used to be the what is it, like Freak School in Coney Island.
Yeah.
I think that's still
Um,
there, probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that the one that like they shoot fire out of their butts and swallow swords?
Yes.
And one of the ladies braids her nose hair.
Yes.
They shoot
Yeah.
swords out of their butts as well.
Yeah.
I mean, most of that is actually accurate. I don't know about shooting fire out of your butt specifically, but you know, you learn how to spit fire, and you do learn how to do sword swallowing. And you learn how to hammer a nail into the cavity in your face, and like, which if you've never seen live, is freaky.
I think
as
I've seen it
hell.
live once.
Yeah. I saw it at a children's bookstore at an event for the last Harry Potter book to come out. That was a night.
Oh, is that the children's bookstore that will remain nameless that you worked at for 8 months, and by that point you had seniority?
Mostly, yeah. That's the place had about 25 people on staff, and I worked there for not 8 months. It was longer than that. It was like 14 months, and in that time, 40 people quit.
When I was,
So that's 150% turnover
And it's just
or more.
It's crazy because
Yeah.
that place is still open.
It is.
I walked by it recently. Also, I bought books there as a child.
They're a very
as a
nice,
straight up child.
It's a very
been
nice
around a long
bookstore. It's just a
time.
nightmare to work for.
Yeah.
Well, what we do is we go there in masks in the dead of night and smash their windows.
Yeah, this is what you got to do.
I'd rather move on with my life. It was a
I
long
went
time
to a
ago.
Neil Gaiman signing there. That was nice.
Smash their windows, Doc.
No,
Look, that's what they learn you at clown college.
I guess.
Class 1, smashing.
When I lived in Ridgewood, there was a guy who lived nearby named Albert Cadabra, who would he could do the nose nailing gimmick thing.
Yeah,
It was pretty cool.
It's that shit is difficult.
So back to speaking of clowns metaphorically, the Ultimate Warrior, pretty bad at wrestling.
Yeah.
There's that one part where he goes for the shoulder tackle and he's supposed to miss, but he goes for it like way before Savage even gets up.
Yeah.
And Savage has to kind of cover for it.
Well, he either was going to run the ropes again twice, which was a bit much.
He had already done it like
yeah,
6 times.
So I'm putting that one on Savage. Savage should have gotten up and been in position, because I think he was supposed to go for the shoulder tackle and Savage was supposed to sidestep him. But if Savage isn't presenting himself as a target for the move, what are you
Warrior's
going
like,
to do?
I only got so many laps left in me, brother.
And Savage knew that. Like, this whole match, just from a wrestler standpoint, is structured around Warrior's weaknesses. All of Warrior's best matches are when he had an opponent that could get around his weaknesses, and Savage knew not to blow him up too much.
His weaknesses, like cocaine.
Well, that's not what I was talking
and
about.
doing things for an extended period of time.
That's
But-
more what I was talking about.
Then in the end, so he does his, Ultimate Warrior, Gorilla Press Slam, and Splash, and it doesn't put Savage away.
Yeah.
He asks his gods for advice.
He starts like walking away. I want to
Right.
shout out Dave Hebner here, like going nuts at him. Like, no, you got to get back in the ring. You count it out. It's a career match. It's your whole career. He's just shouting at him, and Warrior's completely ignoring him, staring at the sky with his hands up. Like, because Warrior had blown through everybody since he debuted. The only times he ever lost, it was through like abject chicanery. And so when he gives Savage his finish and gets the cover and Savage kicks out, he thinks, oh, have my powers abandoned me? Is it over?
Oh, okay.
So he's
You know?
leaving, like, oh yeah, the gods are telling me to just give it up.
Yeah.
And then Savage comes jumping out of the ring at him, and he moves out of the way, and Savage crashes into the barricade really fucking hard.
Yeah.
And that's when Warrior's like, oh no, the gods have not abandoned me. What is the secret to defeat Savage? Oh, I just have to give him the fucking flying shoulder tackle 3 fucking times and run back and forth off the ropes at least 4 or 5 times before I deliver each one. And it works.
Savage sold them all. He flew out of the ring every time he got hit, which is how you do that.
Yeah. If you turn it up really loud, you can hear the Warrior's God speaking to him, and they're saying, you should really tell Vince McMahon to start adding endurance training to the to this whole process because you're visibly tired.
If you listen real closely, you can hear Warrior's God saying, "Good teenagers take off their clothes."
Oh, is he? I mean, that's like the least surprising thing I've ever heard. If he is one of those guys.
And then when he falls down and the dust flies up, it spells sex.
Oh, okay.
that
now
was
I know what you're making
the
reference.
Disney thing. Yeah.
I thought you were.
There's
saying
there's
that
also
he
a penis on his tights somewhere.
There is no
There's a penis in
evidence
his tights.
or reason for thinking Warrior a pedophile
okay.
among all of his flaws.
He's
No,
a
I
homophile.
mean, they're all. It's all just references to hidden Disney dirty messages. I don't advocate. Look, guys.
It's weird that they did
all
have
you-
the live action.
Don't
dicks in
talk
the
to
new
teenage
Lion
girls,
King.
guys. Just don't. Not you guys. Guys in general.
Good advice.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Awkward pause.
I'm sorry I made a dumb joke while you were saying that.
So now moving on to WrestleMania 8, or do you have anything else to say about
I have nothing
Warrior?
else to say. But
So WrestleMania 8, I think, is a much better match between Flair and Savage
Yeah.
for the
Ric
WWF
Flair's
title.
in it.
Ric Flair's in it. So the story behind this match, from a real life standpoint, is that they were going to do Hogan Flair. That was obviously the big match that everyone wanted to see. And there's a couple different reports about why it didn't happen. One is that, as I think Doc has mentioned on the podcast before, their house show matches didn't do very well.
Not as well as they wanted them to. They did a test run, and like a lot of the WWF fans just didn't know who Ric Flair was, or if they did, they didn't really care.
But more likely, I think, and based on stuff that I read about, and,
Yeah.
you know, Hogan would have gone over in that match.
Oh,
and,
for sure.
And been the champion going forward. But he was going to leave, and he did leave. And, you know, they say he's left to do movies and whatever, but a major reason he left was because the WWF was embroiled in this steroid investigation.
Yeah.
And he had been, like, caught doing steroids already. So they didn't want him to be the face of their company anymore. So instead, they switched it to him doing the match with Sid Justice, where they could kind of write him out. And then they needed a world title match. And so they did Savage Flair, which everyone accepted because Savage was a huge star.
Right, of course.
And so they did the match around this whole idea that Flair had claimed to have a relationship with Liz before Savage did, and that he had these like pictures of them together, and he was going to show the world this like centerfold of him and Liz. Eventually, after the match was over, in the aftermath, it turned out that they were photoshopped, or, you know, whatever the equivalent of Photoshop
They
was.
were doctored.
In 92, yeah, and they were actually photos of Savage and Liz. But yeah, it was you know, a cuckold angle. And
At the time, it was dirty.
It was
Oh, big
very
time.
dirty at the time. It was very within Ric Flair's character of like, oh, the ladies are lining up, and what better way to infuriate Randy Savage than imply these kind of things?
right, and it fit in with Savage's character,
Yeah.
who was, you know, historically jealous and overbearing, and he had just reunited with Liz at the previous WrestleMania.
Yeah, just got married.
Right, they got married at SummerSlam.
The whole thing where he took a snake bite for that woman.
On television.
We gotta do an episode
Yes.
of wrestling
Wow.
weddings.
Yes, a literal cobra bite.
Oh, damn. Oh, is it because she's a snake handler and he had to convert?
No,
Jake
Jake
the
the
Snake.
Snake Roberts came out to
Oh,
interfere
okay.
after the wedding and attacked Savage and
Oh.
got his snake out.
Interesting. I did not realize he was an actual snake man. I
Yeah,
just thought
yeah.
he was like a guy who had a snake gimmick.
At
No,
some
but
point, he
he's like a-
stopped.
No, he comes out with
Yeah.
a snake.
He's
always.
like one of the He's like one of the guards in Sen's Fortress.
At some point,
Two people will get Justin Cracchiolo. You'll get that.
at some point, the animal rights guys got on him, and he started not bringing the real snake out anymore. Right?
Not that I know of.
Nope.
Maybe. Okay.
To this day, when he makes indie appearances, part of his deal is that the promoter needs to provide a snake.
Oh, quick thing before we get into the rest of it that I keep forgetting to bring up about Randy Savage.
Yeah.
I find the gulf between his character and the fact that his entrance music is pomp and circumstance.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Well, he was one of the early adopters of entrance music, so there's not that much to it. You know?
So it was just people used to not have entrance music, and then
occasionally somebody, if it fit, like there was a group of Southern rockers called the Freebirds, and well, you can guess what they came out to in Texas.
Sure.
But people didn't come out to anything, and then they were like, "Well, we're gonna come out to Freebird. They're gonna wait for us," you know.
It just had the right kind of grandeur for him.
No, I guess
Like-
The robes and the like.
It doesn't work as well as entrance music, but as celebration music, it's kind of perfect.
Well, and it also, I guess it makes sense. It actually totally makes sense in the context of there wasn't really the concept of entrance music beforehand, because then it was like, well, you know what? I want to really give this some weight when I come out. What's a piece of music that generally plays when people are like promenading or like, you know, when are parading down a lengthy, you know,
Promenade.
Thank you.
It's Raining
Thank
Men.
you. It is raining. Yeah, exactly. And then they were like, actually, let's do Pomp and Circumstance instead of It's Raining Men.
So it's interesting you bring that up because Ric Flair always came out to
Thus spake Zarathustra.
Yes,
right,
yeah.
and he'd been coming out to that since the early '80s, also. And you know, as champion all those years, it was like, well, the glory of Ric Flair, you know.
Who, by the way, in the post-match promos, both of them give absolute fucking masterpiece promos. But goddamn, like Ric Flair covered in his own blood, hair, like he looks like he has just. It looks like he had just gone Super Saiyan and then came back down, but was still covered in the blood of his enemies. Like,
So speaking of the blood, it was always great when Ric Flair bled because it would dye his bleach blonde hair red. In this particular match, you know, they didn't do blood in WWF at this time. And so he blades, pretty clearly blades, and the story is that he was fined thousands of dollars for blading in that match. In another match on the same card, Bret Hart blades, but he does such a skillful job of it that they believed that it had just happened hard way, like naturally, and so Bret was not fined.
Okay, because I was gonna say early on, there's like a shot, like a top-down shot of the ring, and they had just started wrestling, and there's like a lot of blood in the ring.
We're gonna watch that match eventually. It's Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper. It's one of Roddy Piper's best matches. One of the last matches Piper had as a even semi-full-time wrestler, and yeah, it's a great story to be told. So this match with Savage and Flair, nobody had seen really much like this. It was faster paced than the main event style usually was. Savage comes in like he's finally getting a chance to beat the crap out of the guy that's been talking trash on his wife. And like they don't let Elizabeth out. Elizabeth coming out midway through the match is a major spot with all the agents trying to get her to stop.
Including
Dave Hebner.
And Shane McMahon.
Shane McMahon.
Little Shane McMahon, yes.
And like I noticed like, you know, they weren't like pushing her back. I don't think any of them wanted to put a hand on her in front of Randy.
No.
Even like in the guise of security. Because
it was like that other match we watched where it's Pat Patterson.
Right.
Not touching her, but holding his arms around her so that the security surrounding them wouldn't touch her.
So they were actually together.
Oh,
and
yes,
it was all
yes, for a long time.
So at this time, they get married in the wrestling world at SummerSlam 91, about like 6 months before this. In reality, they had been married for a long time before that. They got divorced shortly after this match. You know, for a lot of the reasons that you see on screen, that Savage was super overbearing. He was very controlling of Liz's life. And at some point, she had had enough and she wanted to expand her horizons. Unfortunately, expanding those horizons really led her down a dark path eventually, and she ended up dying of a drug overdose. This is all documented in Viceland's Dark Side of the Ring episode about the two of them.
Yeah, Sherry also was another one that died of a drug overdose. Like she had an injured back for years, and she kind of ended up falling down the pain pill path.
Yeah, like people in wrestling, or people who don't know wrestling very well, will say like, "Oh, there's so many steroids in wrestling." Of course, there's steroids in wrestling. I'm not going to say there isn't, but the drug problem in wrestling is painkillers.
Yeah.
And it's not as bad as it was 5 or 6 years ago, mostly because a bunch of people died. It's really bad for you to take too many painkillers.
Now it's just as bad as that was in the 80s. Now it's just that bad everywhere in America.
Right.
Most of us just smoke weed these days.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. So the match starts off super hot. Savage comes in and just tears into Ric Flair. And Flair's always great getting beat up. You know, he knows how to back off, but not really get away. You know, he does the spot where he does the flip over the turnbuckle, runs to the opposite turnbuckle, climbs, and jumps off like a big counter. But no, Savage just punches him.
There's great when Savage slams Flair off the top rope
Yeah.
like you often do to Flair.
Yeah.
But Savage gets up on the bottom rope in order to do it, so it's
Yeah.
that much higher. I love Mr. Perfect's role as Ric Flair's enforcer outside the ring. They do this great thing that I always loved when heels did with their manager. So Flair puts Savage in the figure 4 and then reaches out to grab Perfect's hand to get extra leverage.
Yeah.
Ref eventually
sorry.
kicks his hand when
that's
he
great.
realizes what he's
and
doing.
this is Earl Hebner.
Yes, Earl.
Right, he's a little skinnier than his twin brother. That's really the only way you can tell them apart. Yeah, so it was great to finish. Savage had a handful of trunks, but after all the cheating that had already gone on, when he wins the match, he wins the title, and I like the way they announce it. They say, you know, here's your winner, and once again, World Wrestling Federation champion. It was a big deal that somebody had won the belt twice. The only people at this time to have won the belt twice were Bruno and Hogan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone else had, unless you want to count when Backlund lost the title in Japan for like a week to Tatsumi Fujinami, which they don't really have in canon.
I think at this point, Moolah had multiple women's titles reigns too.
Yes,
because
that's
she
true.
literally owned the belt and was a horrible person. We've been on that.
I think there were a couple Intercontinental title
Yeah,
double
yeah.
reigns
But
at
I
this
mean
point.
the
Yeah,
WWF
the big one,
Championship,
yeah.
you know. And then, you know, Flair's pissed. Flair goes over and assaults Elizabeth, and Elizabeth starts punching him. And then Savage just blows by the both of them and rips back into Ric Flair. And there's a huge schmoz, and they all get pulled apart. Yeah, both of their promos, as you had brought up earlier, afterwards were fantastic. I like how, you know, how pissed Perfect was, and Heenan comes in and he's pissed. And to relatively calm Ric Flair covered in blood, I always loved his line. It's like, all right, Savage, you did it. Now let's see you do it again.
I love Perfect being like, Savage took a shortcut by pulling the trunks. Ric Flair has never taken a shortcut in his career.
Right.
I,
And Savage, of course, then, you know, still selling the fact that he has to limp really badly, you know, with the belt and with Elizabeth. And his eyes, man, he has eyes that clearly say, when me and a bunch of guys that look like me come over the hills, abandon your villages.
I want to, about the selling. Savage sells his leg like no one else. And Doc, you always would describe him as that he wrestles like a wounded animal.
Yeah.
And especially when he has been wounded in a match, he really looks like that.
Right.
I just really liked his message that, you know, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
I was like, this is a very uplifting message from Randy Savage.
I like how he tries and fails to rip his shirt off like Hulk Hogan. Like, it ain't that easy, dude. Hogan practiced that every night, and sometimes he
well,
doesn't
the
get the
thing-
bottom straight.
Well, as we've covered on this podcast,
Yeah.
Hogan's father was slain by shirts, and so
Right.
Hogan was channeling all of that rage towards clothing.
I thought he was slain by the Paw Patrol.
And then no, that was Cena. They slayed Cena's family and burned his village to the ground, and then he was brainwashed into the pot.
Oh, okay, I got confused.
Savage was also wearing this kind of vinyl costume. Might have
Yeah.
been a little bit harder to rip than Hogan's t-shirt, which, by the way, the golden macho costume, just
Oh, yeah,
unbelievably.
beautiful.
Yeah, wonderful.
Just beautiful. Savage always had great costumes.
All right, do we have any final thoughts?
I just realized my shirt's inside out. Is that a thought?
That counts. That's a thought. I mean, we're talking about shirts.
So the aftermath of this match is kind of interesting because of Savage's problems with Elizabeth. Apparently, and you know, the plan wasn't really for him to be champion for very long. He was kind of plugged into this match.
He loses it back to Ric Flair like 6 months later.
So there's a legend behind that match.
Yeah.
Or not a legend, but interesting fact behind that match. So that match is actually one of my earliest memories of watching WWF TV.
Yeah, me too.
It was a few weeks before Bret Hart beat Ric Flair for the title. And so they filmed the match just for like a regular TV show, not for a pay-per-view or anything. And it's the debut of Razor Ramon, who helps Ric Flair beat Savage. So the story is that they filmed the match, and Savage was really having problems at the time. Apparently, Vince hated it. and hated it so much that they made them go back out in front of the live crowd. They had the announcer say like, oh, because of shenanigans, we're restarting the match, and had them film the whole match again in front of a very confused crowd.
I mean, from what I hear, the original problem was he was originally called Razor Ramen and came out to the ring covered in noodles. It just didn't really get
And it
pulled
was
off that
it was
well.
too hot. It was people were like, this is too erotic. I can't handle it.
I mean, apparently what happened was Vince gave them specific instructions for the match, and then Flair and Savage was like, I'm going to do what I want. And Vince is like, no, you don't do that in the WWF. You do what we tell you. You know, in the NWA, when you've been champion for 10 years, maybe you can just freestyle. No, we want this angle on television. You do what you want on the house shows. We want this angle on television. You're the world champion. This is your job as the world champion. And that's true. You do what the promoter wants, you know, when it's a writer on television. You can't just call your own shots.
I think it's really unfortunate that in these ensuing years, Savage and McMahon didn't see eye to eye. And there's a lot of rumors about why that is.
Yeah.
But one way or another, they didn't have the same vision for Savage's role in the company. And it's unfortunate because Savage is one of the greatest of all time, could have had incredible matches with the likes of Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and everyone else going forward. But that wasn't really in the cards. There are matches between them that were at like house shows and things like that.
Yeah,
there's
not a major program or anything.
There's on one of the Coliseum videos, the video series that WWF was putting out at the time, there's a match that's Randy Savage and Bret Hart against Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels, which was kind of cool. But yeah, eventually Savage ends up leaving for WCW. Has a good run in WCW.
As good of a run as anyone could have there.
Exactly. His match with DDP is supposed to be really good.
Yeah, it is.
I don't remember it that well.
That's one of the bigger problems at WCW. They didn't make a good job of making things memorable.
And apparently Savage just was very paranoid in a lot of ways, was worried about other people doing business, was very protective of his character and of his spot. And I think that also kept him from being able to do a lot of cool stuff later on. I remember when he showed up in TNA once and then disappeared. But, you know, with how TNA was run, God knows why he didn't want to do business there.
Be a man, Hulk.
Be a man. Yeah, he puts out this rap album. That's kind of an amazing thing.
Oh, I do remember hearing about that.
You know,
I think from you, actually, back when it came out, yeah.
You can find on YouTube, if you want a real hoot, you can see him on the Arsenio Hall show. He's fully in character. So was the Ultimate Warrior when he went on the Arsenio Hall show, which is a whole other ball of wax. Yeah. But, you know, Arsenio's very impressed by the Macho Man. And at the last line of the video is like they shake hands, and Arsenio just looks at him and says, man, you should record a rap album. And then years later, he does, because he has a rap. He knows how to just do it and do it. You know, as long as, you know, we can wax a little bit, you know, on premium. A lot of the top WWF guys went on Arsenio there in the middle of the steroid scandal and talked rather frankly about it. You know, Savage just, you know, Arsenio asked straight up, did you do steroids? And Savage is like, I used to, now I don't. It's like putting poison in your body, kids. Please don't do it. And at the time he wasn't. He did again later in his life and all that. But a lot of those guys' relationship with steroids were it was legal. Until it stopped being legal, and until it started being illegal to distribute it. And then by then, a big part of all of their gimmicks was that they were big gassed up muscleheads. And Savage, part of his paranoia is that all these guys were bigger than him. Like, he was a big dude, but Hogan was so much bigger than he was, you know? Hogan went on Arsenio, and he talked about, like, yeah, he did a lot of steroids, but he wanted to impress upon people. You don't just put steroids in your body and then you look like Hulk Hogan. He's like, I did steroids, then I worked out 5 days a week and ate a diet where you look like this.
I'm pretty sure that was after he had lied and said he had never done steroids and then been found out.
Oh, wait, who, Savage?
No, Hogan.
Hogan? Oh, please.
Yeah.
Well, because Hogan didn't do any steroids.
Right.
Terry Bollea did a whole fuckload of them.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan just took lots of vitamins.
Yeah, that's
vitamins.
That's why Hulk Hogan has a penis commensurate with a man his size, whereas Terry Bollea has a much smaller penis due to all of the steroids.
Speaking of people who died, one of the best songs on the Macho Man rap album is his song about Mr. Perfect, his dear friend, the perfect friend.
And lyrics by his brother, Lanny Poffo,
cocaine,
the poet.
Overdose. Yeah. Oh, Lanny Poffo wrote those lyrics. Nice. We should watch some Lanny Poffo at some point. He was great.
Yeah. He was a bit of an anomaly. He was a weird high flyer when there were none.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he would
I
he would
assume
come
his-
out, he'd read a few verses of his poetry, put the piece of paper in a frisbee, throw the frisbees to the audience, and then sort of prance around the ring. He's a very odd wrestler for the time. Randy always made sure he was taken care of, even when promoters didn't want to use him.
It's weird when you have two sons and you name them Randall and Landell.
Landell.
All right, is this no?
I think we can
No.
wrap
Power
it up,
of
yeah.
power, too sweet to be sour, funky like a monkey. Ooh, yeah.
Ah, yes. As told to Savage by Dusty, as told to Dusty by superstar Billy Graham.
Pretty much, yeah.
Tower Power's one of my favorite bands.
Hey, yeah.
And remember, folks, if you can't ride the tiny bike through the full loop, the mafia will kill you.
Yeah, we all need to impress that upon you.
So go to clown college.
Actually, it's not a bad idea.
Premium advice
Premium advice.
from referee Katie Vella here on
Yeah,
Contesting Wrestling Premium.
follow your dreams, those premium dreams, as long
As you don't do steroids.
yes, don't do steroids and continue to give us $5.
Or if
a
you
month.
do them right.
Yeah, do them real good.
Yeah.
That's the yeah.
Do them under a doctor's supervision.
Take
Yeah.
no steroids or take way too many
Look,
is what I'm
steroids
saying.
are like drugs in that they're awesome, and you should take them. Good night.